Well, hello and welcome to this week's Coffee Club. Myself, Robert Grieve, with me as ever, Bill Leckie, and we're Coffee Club on tour.
Yep.
This week, as you can see behind us, we're at Manchester United's magnificent Carrington training ground. Bit of building work going on the far side where you can't quite see. We've just been doing Ruben Amorim's press conference with Harry Maguire. It's just finished 2 or 3 minutes ago. Coffee Club this week, and we have got
courtesy of Manchester United.
Some Manchester United sponsored coffee club. Coffee cups.
Coffee cups.
So here we are. That was quite an eventful press conference, Bill.
Tremendous.
Ruben Amorim under pressure. He spoke the other day about how this was the worst Manchester United team in the club's history, and he's been a bit of reverse ferret, as they say.
Well, as they say in the trade, he was asked immediately. You know, you said some strong words the other day, Ruben, and he right away said, "Let me talk about that." Basically said, "A big boy did it and ran away." I wasn't talking about the players. I was talking about me. I'm the guy responsible. I know I said team, but I really meant coach. Yeah. That's the size of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Listen, he handled it in a way that we probably expected he would handle it, in terms of trying to maybe distance himself or explain away his comments.
Yeah.
But he also spoke very clearly about how the team are really nervous, really anxious.
Yeah.
Are Rangers getting Man United at a good time? What do we think? They play here tomorrow night, or Old Trafford tomorrow night. Do you get the impression that they're anxious ahead of this game?
I don't think there's ever been a better time for any team to play Manchester United at Old Trafford, because I think they've lost 5 of their last 6 on what used to be an absolute fortress in the glory days. There was a really interesting moment when one of the local journalists here sort of said, "Yeah, surely things aren't as bad as blah blah blah," and he said, "What, do you want me to be delusional, or do you want me to tell the truth?" Right, yeah. He was really good. I was really impressed with the guy. He talked about being a young guy who gets frustrated and says things he shouldn't, but he just kept saying things that told you, that losing the first goal can't happen anymore, because he said we've lost a goal in the first 4 minutes, the first 10 minutes, the first 12 minutes, and it can't go on anymore, because when that happens, he can see the team get anxious. And Harry Maguire sitting beside him, sort of going, "Well, is that right, Gaffer?"
I was going to say that to you, because that's one of the things Harry Maguire was asked about. How did he and the players feel about it when his manager sitting beside him is being so publicly critical of him? As the question was put to Harry Maguire, Ruben Amorim actually laughed a little bit, as if, all right, okay. But how do players, do you think, feel about that when they've got a manager so vocal and coming out with a comment that takes everyone by surprise? By the way, he might be right in what he said.
Yeah. But
as he points to the stats and the way that the results that the team had, but if you're a player in that dressing room, you're not going to be happy with that.
He said right at the start of the press conference, if you remember, that, by the way, what I said to you about the players, no, but he also said I said it to the players 5 minutes earlier. Yeah. So again, Harry Maguire was he wasn't nodding along, he wasn't saying, yeah, the gaffer did say that to us. I get the feeling, Robert, and I might be wrong, that Amorim said exactly what he meant in the moment, then he's gone into the dressing room, and they've all been watching it on the big television, that he's then kicked.
Wasn't asked about that.
No, he wasn't. And
didn't get another question he asked about that.
And I think the players have looked at it and said, "Is that right, Gaffer?" And then there's been words, and he said, "All right, okay, I'll go out there and I'll say that actually I meant me, I didn't mean you." Yeah. But I'll be honest, I don't think it's the worst team in their history, because they were relegated 50 years ago.
But they're not a million miles away from.
Well, they're not. I mean, but if people with a long memory, and people with older people like myself will remember that team was really struggling, and and for two or 3 years was in the verge of relegation. Anyway, long story. But the fact is that they are in a very bad way. And he's saying that thing where as soon as I came in, I knew it was going to have to get worse before it got better. I don't think he realised how bad it was going to get. So, in answer to the earlier question, do Rangers get them at a good time? Anybody come here gets them at a good time at the moment. However, you always got to flip it around and say, is it a good time to get Rangers as well? Because other teams will think that because of the situation Rangers find themselves in.
Yeah. How do we feel about it from a Rangers point of view? You've touched on it there, because away from home domestically this season, Rangers have been diabolical. Mm-hmm. I think if you were to ask Philip Clement and the Rangers players, they would have just heard a bit of honesty in there from the Man United people, the manager and one-time captain. Rangers got to hold their hands up and say their away form domestically has been awful, but at the same time in Europe they've been outstanding in certain games.
Absolutely, and I think.
What do we expect from Rangers?
Well, I think one of the things that probably suits is that Manchester United have to come out the traps and go for it. And Rangers have quite enjoyed that in Europe, where they've maybe not had the ball and they've been able to break against teams with pace. And maybe that's what they'll look at for this game, is to try and soak up the first 10-15 minutes and quieten the thing, because it won't take long for the place to go quiet. Because a lot of tourists at Old Trafford, as you already know, they're not. It's not as fervent a place as it used to be. And if it goes quiet, they'll have done the first job. And the second job would be if they can do what the likes of Brighton and Bournemouth and Newcastle and others have done this season, and go and score the first goal.
Yeah.
Because I think if Man United got a goal down to Rangers,
that's what Amorim spoke about.
I think the place could collapse.
That was one of the things, and that's one of the things that actually surprised me to a certain extent, and what he actually just said at the press conference there, was about how if we don't score the first goal, then...
And if we lose the first, that was his big, if we lose the first goal, they're in big bother.
And that's, if you're a Rangers player, Philip Clement...
Yeah, that's your team talk.
There's your team talk,
yeah.
Get a good start, get a foothold in the game, and tell you what, those players who are out there, will those comments from the manager ringing in their ears.
Yeah, it's you would actually probably tape. You would record the press conference off TV, and you would just play it and say, "There's a team who are absolutely bricking it."
I know we've touched on it already, but can managers be too honest?
Yes, well,
because I think it was honesty we got there from Ruben Amorim.
I think the guy's tremendous. I think the guy.
You're saying that because you got a shake. He shook your hand.
He did shake my hand, and we had a wee Portuguese. Thank you very much.
He had a little moment with him.
He did a
puppy dog eyes. He did a little bit about.
He did have those puppy dog eyes, but he's only human. I thought very honest. I thought very impressive, but I also think he is all over the place.
Yeah.
I think he is. Yeah. He talked a couple of weeks ago. It was brought up again there about there's a storm coming at Man United. He's now in a hurricane.
We better be careful, because he's in that room next
door.
I know.
So but yes, but he's caught in a hurricane, and I'm at the age of 39. Scotland's got a goalkeeper 3 years older than him. And I'm not quite sure he quite has caught his breath yet. It just never stops at the moment for him, and it's like what Philippe Clement's going through, probably times 20. And he did. He mentioned Philippe Clement in the situation Rangers are in as well, and he knows what they're going through, and I feel as if he is caught in something that is probably messing with his head enormously.
Too big for him?
No, I don't think so.
The job's not too big for him.
I don't think so. But you're right. Sometimes honesty has to be tempered. And listen, on a totally different scale. Remember the Derek Adams incident at Ross County, where he comes back to Scottish football within 2 weeks, says Scottish football's terrible. This is worse than in English League 2, and he was probably right, in terms of quality. But there's some things that you just don't say, and he never recovered. Yeah. And that's what Ruben Amorim has said about being the worst team in Manchester United's history. Well, hang over him.
Yeah.
Because somebody asked him, can it get any worse?
Yeah.
And it can. Yeah. They could lose tomorrow night to Rangers. They could lose to Fulham on Sunday.
What are we expecting for this game? I'm thinking ahead to what's going to happen at Old Trafford tomorrow night, and I almost think anything could happen. Anything,
yes.
It's a game that
it could be 3-0 either way.
Yeah.
It could be 3 each. It could be anything. I mean, and the thing is, right, Rangers are pretty much secure of a playoff place. I mean, it would take a huge turnaround in results, freaky results for them not to do it. So it's like they're in a good place. Manchester United need to win to make sure that he talked about there not wanting to go through playoffs. They don't need extra games just now. Yeah. So, but if you watch any Manchester United game recently, it could be, especially at Old Trafford, it could be 3-4-0 Man United. It could be 3-4-0 to the opposition. I mean, Newcastle the other week could have been 5-0 up at half time. So I genuinely don't know, and I'm really interested to see how it pans out, because I've got no idea how it's going to work.
Watched the Barcelona game last night when they played Benfica.
That was wonderful.
It was like a basketball game.
Absolutely.
I think it could be the same.
It could be exactly the same.
I think it could be the same. I think you've got two teams who can concede goals, but I think Rangers could have a go at Man United, and I genuinely wouldn't put it past Clement's side to actually go and get a result. I've got a feeling actually that Rangers could do something here tomorrow.
Well, if you remember right back in the day when Rangers came here and got a 0-0, and it was like it was the full anti-football thing, and that was the
but
kind
of. And that admitted that Walter kind of almost
absolutely.
Sold him
but that's what Walter's teams did, Walter Smith's teams did, and that's what they had to do. But here's a totally different thing. If you come here and try and play for 0-0, you could end up losing 5-0. So they have to exploit Manchester United's nervousness, which is there for all to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could be a great game. I
Yeah.
genuinely think it could be a great game, and I'm actually thoroughly looking forward to it. We're at this training ground, as
Yeah.
you can see behind us. You can't really see much other than a bit of grass, but it's a great setup, isn't it? If you were coming,
It's brilliant.
we came in here, we went into the reception, which is the academy reception, and you just see the kind of young kids kind of floating around.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just thinking, what a life.
Imagine being a Manchester United kid,
Kind of academy
coming
player.
here every day. And there's one or two nice cars in the car park. There's one or two nice cars. They're probably more expensive than our houses put together.
But it does when we get to, fortunate enough to get to Rangers training ground, Celtic training grounds around Scotland, and they're generally good setups.
Good, Nick, but they're not this.
They're not this.
And even this isn't number one in England.
I was just about to say that. This is way down
Yeah.
the pecking order in some of the clubs in England.
But what a great place to come to your work.
It'd be a great place to come here.
Yeah.
But away, from a Scottish football point of view, it would be great if Rangers could go into this game tomorrow night and it make a game of it. And even though when everyone's so down on Manchester United right now, their team under pressure, they're talking about how they're the worst potential team in the club's history, whatever. But you want Rangers to come and actually show up.
The same thing happened when Spurs went to Ibrox a few weeks ago, and people were saying, "Oh, Spurs are terrible, Angie's under pressure," but it didn't take away from the fact that Rangers were outstanding on the night. And that's what Rangers needed, that boost to their self-esteem, because as you say, domestically things have been so poor for them at times that in Europe it's almost become an escape.
Yeah.
And I do, and we've talked about this on here before, I genuinely believe they get to play in Europe in a way that suits the way Clement wants them to play, where they play without the ball and then they counter-attack, whereas like Manchester United here, at Manchester United are expected to attack from the first minute to the last at home, and that's what Rangers are expected to do against most teams in Scotland.
Yeah. We spoke when we spoke to Ruben Amorim, and one of the things you asked him about was the kind of synergy between Manchester United and Rangers right now. They've got almost two clubs
Mirror each other.
Yeah. And he identified with Clement, didn't he? He mentioned how he's got empathy for what Clement is facing right now. They're actually two managers in a very similar circumstance.
I mean, he said right away, he said it seems really strange that a club the size of Rangers, with the trophies they have, find themselves in that kind of position, and it must be very difficult for them. Yeah. But Rangers, I mean, Rangers at least Rangers fans won't see this, but Rangers at least are still second in the league, challenging for cups. Manchester United, although they won a couple of trophies under Eric Ten Hag, league-wise, I mean, they're sitting 15th in the league, whatever. Yeah. You know, and it's, for the generation that have grown up under Alex Ferguson, it's unthinkable. Yeah. And it's not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to the game.
That'll be brilliant
tomorrow night. Thoroughly looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Always enjoy going to Old Trafford. There's a big game in Glasgow tonight.
Yes.
We're not there. Derek McGregor's covering Celtic's latest Champions League match. They play Young Boys. This is a huge match for Celtic, for Brendan Rodgers. I was at the press conference yesterday speaking to Brendan Rodgers. Callum McGregor was there also. Callum talking about how it's not a time to be nearly men.
No,
from a
absolutely.
Point of view, a great opportunity for them to grab. Young Boys struggled so far in the Champions League. You'd expect Celtic to get us.
I would expect nothing. I think you would demand.
I'd expect Celtic to win.
Well, I think Celtic should be demanding of themselves that they win, because anything else is unacceptable, especially after Aston Villa losing that. Now Aston Villa now need a result against Celtic next week, so Celtic need a result against Bern. It would also be very helpful to Celtic if one or two other results. If Manchester City drew in Paris against PSG, it would be helpful. If Feyenoord lost at home to Bayern Munich, it would be helpful. If Arsenal beat Dinamo Zagreb, it would be very helpful. And if Celtic beat Bern, then the job is virtually done. And then to have both Scottish clubs into the playoffs for the knockout stages of the two big tournaments would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. I do expect Celtic to win. I think there has to be a degree of expectancy. I don't mean that in an entitled way for a Celtic point of view, saying we will win if you're a Celtic fan. I think Celtic are in a good enough place right now. They have shown in the European games so far this season
they have.
That they should be winning this game.
But the one thing I would suggest is that over the last few weeks, I think they've been slack in the middle of the park at times. They've been slack in areas where teams could exploit them. Now, I don't think Young Boys of Bern are particularly a great side. They've got no points. They've got the worst goal difference, I think, in the tournament. And Celtic, you're right, Celtic should be beating them. But Celtic need to raise their game. Certain players need to lift themselves out from 5s and 6s back up to 7s and 8s, back up to the form they showed against Leipzig and Bratislava and away in Atalanta.
Yeah.
Because any slip up tonight would be disastrous for them.
That Atalanta performance and result, it was a draw, but they earned
that was as good as a win.
And that
was as
for
good
me,
as a
that
win.
turned things around for Celtic, and that got them back in track after the huge disappointment
in Dortmund. Yeah, but it's incredible when you look at this 32 team league, and 22, 23 and 24, right at the bottom of the cusp of going out, are Real Madrid, Celtic and Manchester City. Now, nobody would have seen Real Madrid and Manchester City be in those positions. You've then got PSG sitting in 25, so it's a massive night in terms of other results as well. Celtic need to look after their own business first, but one or two other results go their way. They are nice and secure in the middle of that playoffs group.
What do you make of the new setup? Because
I love it.
We're talking about this on the way down on the train here. Celtic and a number of other clubs could be getting into the last game, potentially not having a clue where they're going to finish.
Yes.
And not having a clue where they're going to finish, regardless of how they do. They're going to be looking at other results. I think, from a spectacle point of view, if you're sitting at home watching it on TV, fantastic. It'll be.
That's exactly what it's about.
And I'm sure, and that is what it's about. But if you're a fan in the stadium at Celtic,
or if you're us,
cratty right about it. But more importantly, if you're a supporter who's
and you don't know,
paid the money, you're at Villa Park as a Celtic fan or a Villa fan, and you're watching the game unfold, and you don't know what happens in the back of the result, what it determines. Then it's great for the fans sitting in the house watching it on TV, but if you're a fan at the stadium, I think you could be all over the place. That's before you get to us.
I know. This is where Champions League and a lot of big sport nowadays. Well, let's take the Champions League. It's a TV event in a lot of ways now. Yeah. And if you're sitting watching one of these kind of red zone shows where they're clicking back and forth between every game, and they are telling you as it goes, oh, this is now how the league table stands. Yeah. Now people are going to be on their phones, etc. But you're right. You're right. There could be 10-15 minutes at the end of a game where there's a stoppage time being played in another match, and you're waiting on another result. It adds to the tension. But you're right. It maybe takes away from the instantaneous joy or whatever of we've been there with Scotland and World Cups and Euros waiting for last minute results coming in.
You may be waiting
for one
result,
but you could be waiting for 5 results.
I've read a few managers talking about this in the last few days about how you almost look at the table, the Champions League table at the minute, and it's impossible to determine where your team is in terms of how good are we.
That's why,
because it's such a vast and it changes so dramatically.
This morning was the first time I think I've been able to look at it and say this is what Celtic need. And that's why I mentioned those other games where if these results were to go their way, then a win against Burnley, say, right, that put it to bed. You're not going to get to the top 8, but you are nice and secure in that group in the middle that gets the playoffs. But anything short, this is why I'm saying don't expect anything, but demand of themselves, demand those standards that Brendan Rodgers and Callum McGregor especially talk about. If they get their own job done in that game, then there's nothing to worry about. And then they can go to Villa Park and not call it a dead rubber, but know that they're in.
Yeah, well, we spoke about this Celtic's last European game, which I thought was a missed opportunity.
You did, didn't you? Yeah.
And that was in my head. If things go badly tonight, Celtic could get a man sent off in the first 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Something dramatic could happen. Suddenly they don't win
things
the game.
Change,
and they have to go to Villa Park and get
a result
against a team who have to get a result.
And to be honest,
suddenly you look back in that last game and think,
I disagreed with you. I disagreed with you at the time, but I think the more the stagger of the Champions League.
You're accepting I was right.
Very occasionally you are, but I'll take you in that one.
That was my point.
At the time, I would have said if you went across to Zagreb, and I was looking at it in isolation of the game itself, going there, a difficult pitch, and not a great place to go, coming back with nothing each, would have been last season before, a great result for Celtic. But where they've put themselves now, you're right, it's not as good a result as it could have been.
That's exactly what I was thinking, and I think I think Celtic will win tonight. I hope they win tonight, but if they don't, they'll go to Villa Park thinking,
what might have been. And also, Aston Villa right now are thinking, why did we go to Bruges and lose 1-0? Why did we go to Monaco and lose 1-0? So Villa Park's a hard enough place to go. Villa are a good enough team without them having to come and win. So the job there's just no ifs and buts about it. Celtic need to win that game.
Well, we're going down to Villa Park next week.
We are.
Fully looking forward to that one. But whatever happens, that's going to be a huge night.
Massive.
And looking forward to that. Listen, keep saying it, we're back here we're in Carrington, Manchester United's training ground. It would be remiss of me not to mention Dennis Law.
Absolutely.
he wasn't here. Wasn't where.
No, he's been here many times.
Where he kind of graced the pitches.
Yeah.
But you wrote a very touching piece, I thought, in the paper after his sad passing last week. What a player! I have to say, it was my old man. Sadly, no longer with us either. He loved Dennis Law.
Yeah.
It was his
So
favourite.
did mine.
He was his favourite, and I'm far too young to have seen him play.
I was lucky enough to catch him when he came back for Scotland at the turn of the 70s. So he came back in the team kind of 71, 72. I was there when he scored his last goal in the home internationals in 72. And he went to the World Cup and he played the first game against Zaire, and he was always really hurt that he never get picked against Brazil in the second game. He always thought that would have been. And he retired that summer. He played one more game for Manchester City almost in pre-season, and then he retired. And I think he retired with a little bit of regret that the World Cup didn't go the way he wanted. Alex Ferguson's right. He was the epitome of a Scot.
Yeah,
he was cheeky. He was mischievous. He was rebellious. He was creative.
And he felt he could take the world on.
And he did all the time. There's a wonderful story about his time here when he's right at the peak of things, and he goes and asks Matt Busby for a pay rise, and Matt Busby says, "No, not a chance." And he says, "Well, I'm away then." And Busby says, "Listen, don't talk to me like that." He says, "I'm telling you, I'm worth the pay rise." Eventually, it comes round. He says. Matt Busby says to him, "I've written a letter, you're going to sign it, apologising, and I'm going to show it to the press." He went, "Okay," he did it. And he says, "Am I getting a pay rise?" He says, "Yep." That's how Dennis worked.
Yeah. Wonderful
man, Aberdonian and Scottish to his roots, and a massive loss.
I think I can try that.
What's that? Asking for a pay rise?
Asking for a pay rise.
Or
I'm off.
Or I'm off.
You know what's going to happen.
Don't let the door hit your backside on the way out, Robert. No, Dennis, a massive loss, absolutely massive loss. And down here, his daughter Diane worked here for many years in the press department, and just a huge loss, and yet another character taken from us.
I was fortunate enough to interview him at Hampden Park one day a number of years ago, and he was just everything you would hope for in a legend, someone that is before my time, but you just grew up on stories of how good Dennis Law was, and to meet him and to speak to him was an absolute pleasure and a privilege.
Our old gaffer Steve Wilsoncroft messaged me the other day talking about him, and when Steve worked at the Daily Star in Manchester, Dennis had a column that was ghosted for him, and he phoned up one day and says, "Listen, I don't know him, can I come in?" And he went into the office and he met the guys and said from then on he just used to come in for a cup of tea.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
That's great, isn't it? That's great. Well, that's us for this week's Coffee Club.
Yep.
Manchester United Coffee Club. You've got we've no cakes, it has to be said. We did actually buy cakes.
Actually bought cakes, but there's no table for the cakes.
We brought cakes with us.
And also we thought Mimo at Bella Vita might have got upset.
A bit jealous. They were only Greg's cakes, but we'll always share them in a way between here and Old Trafford. We're off to the Rangers press conference at Old Trafford at 4 o'clock. You can get all the best news and views from that online and in tomorrow's newspaper. But for this week's Coffee Club here at Carrington's Manchester United's Carrington training ground, we'll catch you next week. And all the best to Rangers and Celtic this week in both the European games.